Even as the clock wound down, Gaskins wrote his memoir. He called it Final Truth, a title soaked in arrogance. In it, he claimed to have murdered over 100 people, many of them victims law enforcement had never found, never even looked for. He talked about coastal kills like fishing trips. He described torture in cold, clinical language. He spoke about his own daughter with contempt. He said love was weakness, that mercy was a lie. People began to debate whether Gaskins was telling the truth or just inflating his legend. But the facts, the bones, and the graveyard in his backyard all whispered the same thing. He didn't need to lie. He was already one of the most prolific killers in US history. And even in a cage, surrounded by locks and guards and barbed wire, he proved he could still kill. He could reach through steel and take a life like he was plucking a weed from the ground. The governor didn't blink. Appeals were denied. Clemency was laughed out of court. And so, the date was set. It was September 6th, 1991, a grey Friday in Columbia, South Carolina. Donald Henry Gaskins, Pee-wee, the redneck Manson, the meanest man in America, was about to be executed. He didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't apologize. He shaved his head and his legs so the electric chair's contact points would be clean. He declined a last meal, saying food just made him tired. He wore prison white, and as he was led down the corridor known as Death Row Walk, he nodded politely at the guards. To the very end, Gaskins held onto his delusion of control. At 1:10 a.m., he was strapped into the electric chair. The room was cold and still. Witnesses sat behind glass, journalists, prison officials, a few family members of victims. No one smiled. No one spoke. Gaskins looked around, his expression unreadable. Some say he smirked. Others say he whispered something to himself, maybe a name, maybe a memory. Then he leaned back, closed his eyes, and waited. The switch was thrown. Electricity surged through his body, arcing through his skull, his arms, his heart. Smoke curled from his skin. His body jerked against the straps once, twice, then fell still. Donald Henry Gaskins was dead. And yet, in a way, he'd ensured he'd never really leave. Because he didn't just kill people. He haunted them. He haunted parents who never found their children's bodies. He haunted police who read his confessions and realized how much they'd missed. He haunted inmates who remembered the way he could slit a man's throat in a whisper and be smiling before the blood stopped pouring. He haunted South Carolina itself, a state that prided itself on manners and church bells and sunlit porches, now forever stained by one of the darkest souls it had ever birthed. At 4:37 a.m. in a quiet Detroit neighborhood, a woman was discovered slumped over the steering wheel of her still-running car. Her head was caved in, the violence so brutal that it left the body unrecognizable. Her clothes were soaked, but there hadn't been a single drop of rain that night. The car was parked in a place she hadn't driven to. No explanation, no apparent motive. There were no signs of a struggle, no weapon left behind, no fingerprints, no clue. Just a lifeless body left to rot in the early morning fog. To the authorities, this was another random act of violence, a senseless killing that didn't seem to make sense. There were no personal ties to the victim, no reason why someone would do this.